ways, really.
Okay.
So if you are, um, if a parent comes to you for a child that's never taken lessons before,
Mhm.
what age are you most keen on having them start? What is your idea about ages for starting lessons?
Okay,
What are you?
that's sorry.
Go ahead.
That's a good question. Like I do vary what I accept as far as age limit. To me, it's a very much a developmental stage. So to me, like if a child is starting to read, that tells me a lot that they're kind of ready to sit down at the piano and do something on it and like actually like focus for a second. It really
Mhm.
is seconds at the very early stage. So like I don't accept 3-year-olds. Okay.
Sure.
I just feel like
Mhm.
they just are not ready to sit and focus long enough. Now, granted, if, one of my daughters was 3 when she sat down every single day in practice. And I was just like, okay, after like months of this, I was like, we may as well be playing a song.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
as far as like accepting a 3-year-old, I mean, it can be done, but the level of commitment from the parent has to be so high. Really, they kind of need to know what they're doing already.
Mhm.
So I don't really accept them that early. Um, in the past, I have taught 4-year-olds, and I actually have a 4-year-old right now. Again, that the commitment from the parent has to be really, really strong, and it is with this child, and she's doing great. But I
Mhm.
prefer them to be reading, and
Yep.
so I'm thinking like 5 is young. I prefer 6 and up.
6.
Like, I'm quite happy to teach a 6-year-old. Um, they go faster when they start at 8. So I don't know that it's like in the end game is better, but sometimes like parents just want something for them to do while they're a little bit younger, and I don't mind that. I'm quite happy. We play lots of games and we have lots of fun. But
Mhm.
reading is like my if they're starting to read, then I'm like, yeah, we're there. We can
Mhm.
start.
I feel like that too with, reading. If they're not reading at least semi-proficiently, they're basically trying to learn letters and the music at the same
Hmm.
time, which
And I
is
have I have come across that, and it's like, oh, they don't recognize their letters. What are we gonna do? So we have to kind of
yeah,
like learn it at the same time, and that can be
yeah,
tricky, but it can be
yeah,
done. It's not very ideal though.
yeah, yeah. But I'm with you in the sense where you just said if they're just a little bit older, they do go faster because
Mhm.
they already have a foundation of reading and sitting.
Right, right. And it does go hand in hand because if
Mhm.
you're going to be sitting down at the piano for a couple, otherwise it becomes an exercise in the parent trying to keep the child at the piano. And I don't have them practice a lot at the very
No,
beginning,
no.
but at the same time, like they do have to sit there. And if they
Yeah,
can't sit there,
right.
then
Yep. They have to be able to sit for a little while at the lesson as well. Otherwise, you're just trying to get them to sit still, which I have seen other students or other teachers have to do that in other places I've worked because, mom and dad wanted them to take a lesson, but they're not really, they're not really sitting well. So it can be challenging for the teacher.
now, I want to throw in there. So how I handle this is when I have young students, and it's really only in the first book because I do entertain the children in that first
Mhm,
book, the
mhm,
primer book. Um, and then as they get older, they're like, why aren't we playing so many games? And I'm like, well, the music becomes the entertainment then. Then they're like, oh, I just played something cool and that was fun and I like that. And that is what pulls them along. But in that first book, I have all the tricks. I have like
mhm,
dice, and then like I'll get them up off the bench like 5 times through the lesson. I'm like, go put this on the board, go put this on the board, go this like go do some sort of game in between every single piece. So they're literally never sitting at the bench more than like 2 minutes at a time. And that keeps them going. And then all of a sudden they're just like, oh wow, 30 minutes is gone. And so it really
mhm,
does help
mhm.
with that.
Sure, sure. So what lesson books do you use for beginner? What is your favorite method books, or are you a mix and matcher?
I am a Faber all the way. So Faber
Okay.
Piano Adventures, I love it. And it's really what I see. I have it right here.
Mhm.
The Piano Adventures book. I love them. What do you use?
I have used Faber. Emma used Faber probably after I grew up with Sham. I had
Okay.
Sham. So I think I did every single Shawn book there was, from the little A, pre-A book all the way to the end, whatever that last color was. So I think that's probably what I started Emma with, was that green, the little green primer from Shawn. Sometimes people come to me, their other children have been taking lessons somewhere else, so they have all these books from that, so I'll just use what the parent already has, you know what I mean, at the
Yeah, because
house,
you
which
hate to
is,
make them buy something.
yes, if they have it already. But a lot of them, a lot of Emma's teachers, as she got older, they used the Faber. So, you
Okay.
know, some of
So
those I mean, I use those as well, but
I've heard of the Shawm, but I've never actually used them, so only
yeah,
know
it's
of
very
them.
old. It's very old fashioned.
I
But it's good.
I am familiar with the Alfred. Have you used those?
I have some of the Alfred. I don't think that I ever used them when I was taking lessons, but I have had students that were using Alfred. They came to me from somebody else,
Hmm.
and so then we just continued in that book that they were using. So,
I did use the Alfred with my students, and I switched when I switched to Faber. I actually the story of me switching to Faber was that my youngest was learning piano, and I was like, we got to get something else in here because I'd already gone through like three kids of the one book, and I was
you're
like,
tired of
she's
it.
gonna have this memorized. I was just looking for anything else I could find, and I went to the store, and I was just like, oh, we'll try this one, and then I was like, I absolutely fell in love with it, and there were two reasons. One was that it starts moving their hands around right away. And so they don't like get the whole C position, G position, and then they're like, okay, fourth finger's on F, fifth finger's on G. And then all of a sudden they move in like another book or two and they're like, I can't do
I don't know.
this. And then all of a sudden
Yeah.
they want to quit piano. And so Faber moves their hands quickly early on, like from the very beginning. And I'm just like, and my pat answer is like, they're like, oh, why do they do that? And I'm just like, because there's 88 keys in the piano. I'm like, do you have 88 fingers in your pocket? And I'm like, well, did you bring
Mhm.
88 fingers with you today? And they're like, no. And so I'm just like, well, we have to move around because there's a lot of keys on the piano. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they're fine.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit of a struggle, but not a huge struggle at this like one set point later on. And so I love it because of that.
Okay.
Also, and we're gonna touch on this later, so I'll just tell you why and not explain. But they have, and I'm sure other curriculums have like lots of different books, but I know that the Piano Adventures has the sight reading book, and I absolutely love the sight reading book, and I use that with 99% of my students. So
Okay. The
that's
Faber has a rain book.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what kind of practice tips are you giving for the littler ones
Okay,
when
so I
they're
guess I'm just gonna go with sight reading because
Yep.
this is like
Yep.
so ingrained in how I teach. I read about it a couple years ago, and I just started using it. I when they sit down to practice, I have them play their lesson songs, and I usually in the very first book I'll give them two songs. Usually that's kind of like standard unless they're super fast or super slow, and then but medium is two songs, and then every other song just about in that book, once you hit the staff, like once you start learning the staff, um, they have a sight reading song. But the sight reading song is like, okay, so it's March in C is the first song in Faber. They have 6 March in C's in the sight reading book. And they're like, don't practice this. And all of my students go, why are we practicing this when it says don't practice this? I'm like, because my students practice it. And so instead of them playing their lesson song until they have it memorized and coming in and having it memorized, because really, I mean, when you've got like 8 measures and you're practicing it like every single day, you have it memorized by the end of the week. But they don't.
Mhm.
They have 2 songs in the lesson book and 6 songs in their sight reading. So they actually have essentially 8 songs at least every week that they're practicing. So really, if they play their lesson songs like 3 times and they play each of the sight reading 1 time, there's 5 or 10 minutes. They've sat down, they've played, they've mixed up the order of the things that they're learning, and then they're done. And I don't necessarily in the first book require practice time. I'm just like, just play the
Mhm.
songs. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I do, once we hit the staff, I do emphasize flashcards somehow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Flashcard app, and I will tell the parents, and every time I say this, they are like, "What?" I'm like, if you're gonna have one or the other as far as practicing or flashcards. I prefer you to do the flashcards. I was like, that's the most important part of the very first book. By the end of the book, I want them to be really, really confident in their flashcards. And I'm like, if they aren't confident in their flashcards, I just tell them they'll find it hard and they'll quit. So it's like if you want your child to enjoy it, start doing the flashcards when it's easy and keep it going through the book. And when they grasp that they want their child to succeed. Most parents do. I mean, they don't want them to like quit. I mean, they're putting quite an investment into lessons. I'm like, if you want your child to do well, then you really need to do the flashcards. It's a process. Not everyone starts practicing every day, 5 days a week from the get-go. It's for me, it's like a process through that first book of the parent kind of getting into the habit of getting their child to sit down and practice. But
Mhm,
usually by the end of the book, we've got it.
mhm, mhm. So, your flashcards, are you introducing, do you have, is it all pretty much notes, or are you doing symbols and that as well when you're
No,
doing
just the
the
notes.
just notes? Mhm,
In the first book, like it just starts with middle C, and then you go like C to G in the right hand, and then C to C in the
mhm.
left hand by the end of the book. So I just
Right.
I have a printout where they can just like some people just they want to print it out and laminate or not laminate or whatever and cut them out. And I'm like, if you're crafty and you want to do that, you go for it. Or they can buy them, or they can do an app. It just depends on the situation. I don't care how they do it as long as they do
Yeah.
it.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I've always liked flashcards too, and I had 2 sisters that took lessons at the same time, so the one would just kinda be there and the other, and I had, a staff laminated, like, huge, and lay it out
Hmm.
on the table, and then give them
Ooh.
all the little notes, and I would tell them, "Okay, I would just give them a sheet, that had, F, C, G, and you just put them all on the staff the whole way over till all your buttons are gone,
Hmm.
and,
I like that.
while the other one was doing her lesson, and then we would switch, kept the other one from, running around.
As you do,
But
I understand. Yeah,
yep,
I
but
love that.
they liked that. They did, and it was like I had a big treble clef, and so I'd put that down, and then I'd have bass clef, so we could do it opposite way, you know what I mean?
I love that because
So,
I actually have a trouble. I have a big thing, but I never thought about buttons. I love that.
yep,
I might
yep,
steal that.
yep.
But I keep thinking because I just got my into my studio this week, and so I keep thinking in my mind I want to buy like a big white rug, and do like lines on the rug,
Lines. That would be
and
fun.
have that. But one thing at a time.
Yep, yep. Yes, I understand.
The let me
Okay.
while we're on this one, I want to tell you the two apps that I love because I'm an
Oh,
Android
yes,
person. We are Android family, okay? And there are so many apps apparently on the iPhone products, but there's not many on the Android.
on the
So the
Android.
two that I use are Flash Note Derby, which I love and the kids love. It's like horses and
Oh, okay.
unicorns and there's like four different options you can use on the same app. And then a new one that I just started was oh, what's it called? I just had to look up. Note Rush. Note
No
Rush is
rush.
awesome because it hears the piano and they have to play it. So they
Oh,
actually
that's
play it
cool.
on the piano and then it tells and it has like some different themes for the seasons and stuff. It's really fun. So it's very
Oh,
popular
that's
in my
cool.
studio right now.
Good, good. I've never heard of either of those, so that's good. I am not I enjoy stuff with the computer or the phone or apps, but I don't ever it's like the last place I always look. I don't know. I guess
Well,
I'm
it takes
old.
time to find the stuff. Like, because
Yeah,
sometimes
sure.
it's just not like you go through 10 apps, but I find that if you're like online and you're like looking at and all these teachers keep saying about it, I'm like, okay, the teachers know.
Right, right. It's something to be looked at for sure.
Hmm.
All right, so where do you wanna go now? Let's see. Talked about that.
You asked about music appreciation.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you do for that?
Well, I feel like, with our own children, Tom and I are, certainly not, um, we're not from the orchestra or the opera singers or anything, but we both are musical to a degree, and both of us have always had a lot of music appreciation in our own life in the sense that, we enjoy going to live music. We always enjoyed all kinds of music, not just classical, not just, Irish style, not just, folk music. It was always, and not just church music. We've always tried to be very varied with the stuff that we enjoy. And we've tried to do that. We tried to do that with our kids too, just really introduce them to all different kinds of music and styles of music. Um, my husband loves classical music, and so probably all of our children's life while he was home working, if he was at home working, there was classical music playing in the background,
Mhm.
which I really think maybe not so much with our oldest son, but I know with Emma and Sam both, they have come to recognize what those songs are just because they've heard them for so many years, just kind of in the background, you know? And we always took our children to lots of, we lived in Chicago, so there's lots of live music that's
That's
free.
really cool that you have that opportunity. We live in
Yep,
a small town, and so I'm sure there are opportunities like further afield, because I haven't really explored that yet, but I need to.
yep,
But in our actual town, there's not.
not, yeah.
So
You have to
I
go a
love
little
your,
bit out. Yeah,
what was that?
a little bit. You have to go a little further out. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love the
But
idea of, we have so much accessible on our devices just to listen
mhm,
to. And my kids
mhm.
are like, I mean, when they're washing dishes, when they're doing homework, they've got it on Google's playing whatever. You
Right.
need to get your gun. Like she's, like we've got the sound of music. We're all belting out The Hills Are Alive with the sound of
Yep,
music and stuff
yep,
like that. So I think that's so key, is like the children love what you love, and you're just enjoying the music in life. I think when you
mhm.
stick a child down and you're like, sit down and listen to this, like I'm not really picking apart my childhood, but like, you have like music appreciation classes and like music class, and nobody liked sitting there and just listening to a piece of classical music, okay? But like when you're all just like running around the house, like cleaning, and you've got music in the background, it's
Yep, yep,
fun. And if
yep.
your kids see you
Patriotic
having
music.
fun, yeah.
Patriotic music is really good for, cleaning. Makes you
We didn't
move.
have that so much growing up with our kids, but for
I'm
obvious
just I'm
reasons.
just saying John Philip Sousa really makes you wanna scrub.
Yep.
Um, and our, we did a lot of with our children when they were growing up, we did a lot of, like the hymn stories. You can find a lot of books, about stories behind the hymn, and so we did a lot of those, like,
Oh.
in family devotions. Um, and so I kinda grew up in a church that didn't have a very broad musical kind of style. I don't know how else to say it. But as I grew older and I learned about music and I played, I discovered so many beautiful hymns that were very old that I never heard growing up. It was
Mhm.
not something that we used. And so Tom and I both have tried to do that with our kids, is introduce them to some of those probably, older, not so familiar hymns, just because the words are so doctrinal and
Mhm.
beautiful. And so we did that with the hymn stories, and that helps kind of um, maybe humanize the songs a little bit to people, that they understand the person that wrote it or
Yeah, because when
whatever.
you understand the history behind it, it's like it just makes it richer.
Mhm.
So I
Much more
love that you did
meaningful.
that. We've never done that, but I might steal that too, because that's really cool.
Yep,
We
yep.
introduced hymns not in family devotions, but in church. Like my husband's always been big into learning, always learning something new at church,
Mhm.
but new as in old songs as
Old.
well as
Yeah, right.
songs that have
As
been
more
written recently.
modern. Sure.
Yeah, and so the kids actually have a very wide pool of songs that they know, as far as that. But I don't know that, I know that they would absolutely love to learn the hymn stories, but and grew up with some of that, but I hadn't even thought about that in forever. So I think they would love that.
Yep. Yeah. It's good, you homeschool, so it's also a good elective kind of thing to do
Mhm.
for homeschool.
Hymnology.
Um, yep. Some, um some of them actually, when they were younger, we would memorize the words as a poem, like part of school, instead of singing it. I mean, we obviously sang it, but I would have them just memorize the words because they're beautiful. So that's, and also the last thing was our kids went to bed every night when they were little with music playing,
Mhm.
something, either, Patch the Pirate or just instrumental music or Christian music. I always try to, have it that to be Christian music versus, classical at night, but
We did that as
something fun.
well, and we used the Bible truth hymns,
Yep,
Bible songs for kids that have Bible
yep,
verses,
Bible
when they were
verses.
little, like during nap time and bedtime. And we found that, you know, if they were a little bit scared or a little bit nervous about something, it just would calm them, and just
Mhm.
hearing those verses over and over. Um, Once our oldest got into school, we had to pull back on the music in the day-to-day hours because she still can't. She cannot focus on two things
Concentrate.
at once. It's got to
Yeah.
be quiet for her to do school. And that was 12 years of school, you know. And now she's finished. My youngest is always has music on when she's doing homework and everything. And that was one of those things that my husband would come home and be like, why isn't there music on? Like, why don't you? And I'm like, she can't do school with music on. It's gotta be quiet. So we had to kind of balance that with
Yeah.
having quiet hours for
I
school and trying to put it
I
on
was gonna
later.
say that that's how I am. As much as I love music, there are
Mhm.
times in the day where I just don't want it on.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about something, where I just have to have it quiet. So I get that totally, Ashley's dilemma there, because I'm that way. I'm just like, "Nope, we gotta stop," it's like when you're driving and you're trying to concentrate, you have to turn the music off because you have to
Yes,
think,
my kids
you know?
know. I'm like, everybody quiet. They're like, my husband's like, you don't need it to be quiet to drive. And I'm like, I do.
Yes, yes, I do. I have to think what I'm doing here, so I get that, yeah.
Yeah.
So are you a fan of teaching, scales, arpeggios for more advanced students? Are you that kind of a teacher?
Okay, I wasn't. I started, I, but you know what? If I wasn't, something's coming. Okay, so my background is as a church music major. I was a pedagogy major, so I didn't like learn all of the how to teach. I just like kind of, as being a homeschool mom, just like took parenting into the piano world, okay, and
Right,
just like worked with kids. But then, so we just started off really with just a lesson book. I was teaching my kids, okay, and then it just gradually got bigger and bigger, and so then I've started implementing scales actually really heavily this term since Christmas. And I've been giving them to, and I teach a lot of students who don't find piano like super, super easy. Like I do have some students who just fly. Okay. But I would say more of my students don't. They go steadily.
just
Okay.
steady, yeah.
And some of them even struggle. Um, and I gave them these scales that are like 5 finger scales. And they've been coming back in the last couple weeks and they're like, I love this. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay,
Mhm.
good. I'm glad you love
Mhm.
it. But all of a sudden, the ones that struggle to read the music, and not everybody does, but the ones that struggle to read the music are like, I can do something well. And it's not
Mm.
hard. And I'm finding, I'm calling on my pattern kids because the pattern kids are like, I see the pattern and it changes and it's like easy. And they're
Oh,
so excited about it. And I'm like, why did I do this from the get go? But whatever. And so, yes, I am actually starting, and my kids are getting really excited about it. Part of it as well is I'm very careful not to um, communicate that it's drudgery to them.
mhm.
So I'm like, do you want to fly? I'm like, everybody wants to go fast. And then I'm
Yeah,
like, okay. I'm like, that is what you're going to do, but you have to start slow.
yeah.
Okay. And so they're really enthusiastic about it and knowing that eventually they're going to get to music and they're going to open it up and there's going to be a scale and they're like, oh, I can do that. And
Yeah,
then when they do get there, they're like, oh, I know it. So yes, I'm actually getting a lot more excited about scales than I ever was ever before.
yeah. I grew up with a lot of scales, and I think they helped me also learn the keys. It was
Mhm.
to be able to look and see, okay, this is an F, this is D flat, because I could see that in the scale. And I think for him playing, I don't know about you, but those helped me with him playing because then, um, so if a song is in D, well, I know the scale, so then it helps you with adding because
Mhm.
then okay, well, this is what's coming next because that's in the scale, that kind of a thing. So I liked scales. I feel like I have a toss up, or in the past I've had a toss up. I don't have a lot of students now, but some of them really loved them, and others of them were like, they hated it. They just didn't like it. But
Yeah, because it's hard. Like the fingering is hard, and I'm
right,
just like the fingering is essential. Like it is
it is.
wrong if
It
it's
is.
wrong fingering because it's just you want to be able
Yes,
to do it really
yes.
fast. And even one of my children, just until recently, struggled and just didn't like the C major scale is the worst because there's nowhere to like hang your fingers. Like it's just completely white notes. And she finally grasped it, and then she's fine with the rest. It was just
Uh-huh.
like that one scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, some kids don't love it, but they tend to be sometimes the kids that do other things really really well, and so they just, there's so many, like I usually find kids are good at something and they
Uh-huh.
like what's easy to them,
Yep.
and they struggle with the
Absolutely.
others, and that's just life.
That's that's me too, right?
Yeah.
Like all those sharps, I'm like, "I don't like this song. I'm gonna find another one."
No, so
I'm
so
not playing
my
this.
I have a student who doesn't like flats because she's a violinist, and
Oh,
violinists
okay.
don't, I mean, flats are hard on on string instruments. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we have to play lots of flats until they're easy. And she's like,
Yeah.
no. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have done that with sharps because 'cause I'm that way with I'm like, I always look at it, I don't know what it is, and I'm thinking,
It's a
"This would be
mental
so much
block.
easier if it was flats." Why does
It
it have
is,
to
because
be
I was
sharp?
the
That's
same
hard.
way.
Yeah. So I still resist those after about 3 sharps, I'm like, I have to do something else. I can't think in that anymore." So do you have, your own, scales and things that you put together? Because I know, you notate music and stuff, or do you just use a certain book for those?
I don't have them by books because I have them by the lesson theory sight reading, and I'm like, it's enough. Okay, because
Yeah.
I don't have them by the technique book. Just because I feel for parents. I'm like, they're already working out for lessons and they've got all these books and stuff. So I went onto a notation program and just wrote out the scales and the fingerings.
Yeah.
But some students hate that. Like there's just like they just see a sea of notes and they're like, oh. So
Too much.
I just recently found a system where they literally just had 5 blocks. Like it's a 5 finger scale pattern, but it's like for C, it's like 5 blocks. Like it's just a grid. Okay. Oh, we're gonna have to wrap it up here. It's a
Mhm.
grid, and so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If they're white notes. So you start on C, and it's all white notes, and then once you hit D, like you shade in the F sharp. So like the third box is shaded in, and
I
the
see.
kids that are visual, like not everybody. Some kids are like, huh? And I'm like, and then I just literally write the note into the box and they're okay. But some kids are
Yeah.
visual and they're like, oh, the third one's a black box. So that's the third note is a black note. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just their kind of
Right.
like their learning style feeds into which way they learn the
Which
scales the
way it goes
best.
for them.
What do you
Well,
do?
since you're what do I do? Okay, so I have this I think well, I had a book that was my mother's actually. That was a Shawn book. I still have that one. It's probably from the '60s. It's falling apart, and, it has every scale up to 3 octaves written out. So, we just use that. I just work with it. I put it up in front of them, and we'll do a couple and I take it away, and say, "Okay, let's try it without that because you know what it is now." And
Mm-hmm.
with the fingering patterns, okay, so it's 3 4 3 4 3 4. You
Mm-hmm.
have to memorize, so you're starting here and you're ending here, and you got to go third finger, fourth finger, third, and then backwards. So I do that kind of stuff. But I also had a set when I was in college that my teacher. It was something that she just printed, and it's not copyrighted or anything. It was just loose paper. I don't know. Maybe she put it together
Mm-hmm.
herself, so I do use that one too, and I just copy it for them because it's just paper. It's not a book that is I
Right.
don't think I'm breaking the law.
Yeah. No, yeah, I
I think it
understand.
was my
Yeah.
teacher. I think it was my teacher's, stuff that she just passed out. But, I've used that for years. I just have it in a binder and
That
that
can
kind
be
of a thing.
helpful. Some kids want to have it on a paper and some kids just want to have it in their head. It's just you just kind of have to go with their learning
Yep.
style and it's
No,
fine.
yeah, it is true because I like it on paper. I'm not a memorizer. I don't memorize well. So even if I have it memorized, I still want it there just in case I don't have it memorized
Yeah.
anymore.
Same. That's totally me. Like
Yeah.
I don't make my kids memorize anything, but some kids want to and I'm like go for it, but I'm not going to put that.
And
I
some
don't.
kids are so good at it. They're
Mhm.
good at memorizing, you know? And I'm not.
I'm
So
not a fan of the pressure. I grew up with I felt like a lot of pressure where I took lessons and where I went to school and of like excellence and all that, and I don't teach that way. I want them to do their best, And I heavily emphasize just do your best, and then it doesn't matter. We love you. It's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
And I know that's not going to maybe cut it in conservatory or whatever, but that's not really why I teach them. I teach more with the idea of either for enjoyment or for playing in church and for the Lord.
Yep.
And so some of my students don't go to church and they just play for enjoyment. That's totally fine. That's cool. I want them to do the best that they can, but I don't like to pile the pressure.
Yeah. I understand. I understand. I always felt that way too. And some kids enjoy that. They enjoy the competition aspect
Mhm.
of it.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
there are some, but I was not one of them. I never liked that, and, so
I
I can see that.
the students who enjoy the competition, like you can see I have three pianos in here.
Uh-huh.
I have started teaching some group lessons of 3 students at a time, and they all wear headphones and I go around. But see the like competitiveness of just having another student that's a little bit ahead of them. I never put the pressure on, but they hear a little bit here and there, and you can see it drives them. And I love
Mhm.
that coming from inside of them. It's not being put onto them, but it's coming inside of them, that competitiveness like you would have with sports or something. And they just want to do better because they want to
They
kind
would
of
do better.
be where the next person is. And I
Right.
love seeing that. It's cool.
And I think that's not maybe necessarily competitive, it's more of an aspiring to be
Hmm.
better, because I'm that way, if I hear others play, like you come to our church, you play, well, I listen, I think, "Oh, wow, that was really good," or you hear in him playing, some add-ins or fill-ins that you never used before, or,
Hmm.
you try to implement that. I love going to other churches and hearing their music because it's like it gives you ideas,
Hmm.
and I'm kinda nosy, so I love that. I love that. But so I feel like it's gotta be the same with kids, like you're saying, they're listening to somebody else who's maybe just a little ahead, and they think, "Oh, wow, they can play that song? Well, I wanna try that too," and learn
Yeah.
that one too, so, yep. So what else? We got 5 minutes. What else did you wanna
Yeah. Rhythm.
cover?
Rhythm.
Rhythm. Okay, yes,
I'm
go.
excited to tell you how I do rhythm.
That's my weakest thing, so I'm ready to hear about that.
I'm not good at rhythm. And that's why I do this. Okay. So I do not teach counting with numbers at all from the beginning,
Okay.
even with adults. And I tell the kids, I'm like, I don't even do this with the adults. And I'm probably going to run out of time. And anyways, I teach words. So my words are plum for, and I did steal that from my son's guitar teacher in England. She used plum for one, and it just works well. Plum, 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 plum. It just sounds great. You can't really
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
And then it's carrot for 2 beats for half note, and it's cantaloupe for 3 beats. My first
right.
student that I taught that, she chose what we were using, and I just stuck with it for easiness sake.
Uh-huh.
And then watermelon is 4 beats. And then
Okay.
the reason I do that is because I have noticed that, well, first of all, we speak in rhythm. We don't go watermelon, like we just say
Uh-huh.
watermelon. It's all
Right, right.
equal, okay? And then the finger numbers and the counting numbers is too much for most of my students. Now,
Yes.
every once in a while, like I get a kid and they just are a numbers person and they just like can't stand the words, and then I'll just let them do numbers. It's fine. Like if you want to do numbers, that's fine. But usually I'll just say, okay, just humor me. So the way I teach the very first book, the primer book, I'm like, okay, for the first book, you have to speak everything. So if they're like going, like CE, well, anyways, I'll be like the quarter notes. They don't have to say the counting; they say the letter note, and on the anything else, they have to say the fruit or vegetable. Okay, so it's
Gotcha.
like CE carrot FD carrot. Okay, and they have to say everything out loud. And I find because over time, I was like they're just kind of like guessing, and like they'll just kind of find any note that kind of sounds sort of similar. Um, so they're kind of mentally just like going somewhere else, and their fingers are just kind of like hitting any old note. I'm like, no, when you have to say it, you have to fully engage in every single note. And then if you're saying like the any other note value that's like the 2 beat or the 3 beat or the 4 beat, then
4.
they're when they say watermelon, they're gonna hold it for the whole time. And then literally like the song just kind of plays itself, but they have to say it.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Um, yeah, I'm a big fan of when they're really starting, tapping, clapping, through the whole rhythm first
Mhm.
before we even start to try to, because like you said, if they've got the finger numbers, the letters, it's so much. So, I try it when I get a new song with a student. I'm sure you probably do this too. We go through, we talk about all the notes first, and we clap out the whole rhythm. Now we're gonna
Mhm.
start trying to put it together because otherwise, like you said, they're just guessing.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah, and
just
then they
guessing.
get to the end of the book and they're like, "Why can I still not play?" And you're just like, "Oh," because you
Yeah.
just saw it was going up and coming down, and we still don't
Yeah.
know what those notes are in between.
Right.
So,
We still forgot.
yeah,
So really quickly, do you have, if you have someone that plays by ear and wants to learn by note, is there any
sight
uh,
reading.
sight reading? Yep.
Yeah, if they the ones that struggle, they don't always love the sight reading if they're an ear player, and that's totally fine. Sometimes I'll let them play something by ear, but they have literally like 8 new songs every single week. Almost all my students, like as they go through, they're just strong at sight reading. And if they're I tell the parents, I'm like, if they're strong with sight reading, piano stays fun, because when you play a new song, you're not just like wanting to throw the piano out the window and quit. Okay, so I
Mhm.
think sight reading is so important. um, and I love having it with the method book so that it's exactly what they're learning as they play through the
As they
songs.
go, as they progress through. Okay. You have 55